Before I begin this review, the standard Bethesda disclaimer applies. I think the game is beautifully done, has a great atmosphere, and is full of surprises that really make just exploring the wastes a worthwhile endeavour. In particular, the vaults are great, and one of the only instances in gaming I can think of where exploring copy and paste environments has yielded a different, memorable experience each time. Even outside of the vaults, you have a verdant oasis with a most tragic patron, a cheerful little town with a pitch-black secret, a love letter to H.P. Lovecraft in the form of a dank old tower, and more besides. There's so much to do and so much worth doing. But while Bethesda may be excellent at building worlds, it continues to be dreadful at telling stories within them. So let's dissect the main quest. It starts off with you being born and killing your mother in the process, then you cut to a year later to find that your father, Liam Neeson, is an evil mastermind who lures you into traps so that he can go about his day. The line, I know you don't like it when Daddy leaves you alone, but you need to take care of yourself for a while, is also massive foreshadowing. We see your childhood unfold, with you having the opportunity to define your character in ever so mild ways. Basically, do you want to be a nice child or a total dick? And we get to figure out bit by bit that the Vault is under somewhat zealous leadership and that tensions are mounting regarding the no one ever enters and no one ever leaves policy. Then your dad leaves, and you have to leave too, lest you get murder-faced, and it's off to adventure. Some have praised the ability to define your own character by having them played from birth. Usually they do this while criticising New Vegas' and Media Res beginning, but for me this is all a bit of an illusion. Your character is as rigidly defined, or as loosely defined, as they always have been. No matter what, your parents are defined, the place you grew up in is defined, and your interactions with others is defined in pretty black and white terms. You are either nice or a jerk. For those with imaginations, however, you can define your character very broadly, and it seems, judging by the fan art and fanfic I've seen people have done, just that. Well, I say broadly, mostly it seems people like to pretend that their character is straight out of a teen romance manga, being all kawaii and stuff. Anyway, my point is that be it Oblivion, Skyrim, Fallout 3 or New Vegas, it's all the same. Your character is either rigidly defined or not defined at all, depending on your point of view and imagination. There's no real difference between the two games in how well the game itself lets you define your character, in my opinion anyway. So to the story proper, stopping off at Megaton, you meet Colin Moriarty, arsehole in charge of the local bar. You either do a shady favour for him to get info about your dad, pay him, or get the info outright through a speech check. This speech check stuff, circumventing most obstacles, is a feature that's standard through most of the game, and while it is true to its Fallout predecessors in this regard, it does tend to lead to a lot of anticlimaxes. I'd point to Mass Effect for examples where speech checks can provide an easier alternative to problems, while still being satisfying in a narrative and gameplay perspective. Fallout 3 lacks that. It's all very simplistic. You can literally convince the big bad to pack up and go home without so much as a how do you do, and it really grates. Anyway, we end up at Galaxy News Radio after a run-in with some of the series' primary mooks, the Super Mutants. We also meet the Brotherhood of Steel, but their personalities are ill-defined outside of being seasoned combatants with little patience for you. Three Dog, however, is a delight of a character, which is about 85% thanks to his voice. Outside of that, though, I do really like his character. His flashy radio personality is a breath of fresh air from Bethesda's otherwise cookie-cutter character model of soft-spoken nice character or abrasive arsehole character who denies you respect to the point of absurdity, with the old wise old man thrown in there, here and there. Galaxy News Radio itself also allows Three Dog's comforting voice and character to follow you wherever you may go, and in some of the scarier ruins it's a palpable relief. Just again, a speech check can cut your time in DC considerably and take you to Rivet City, which is easily my least favourite place in the Wastelands. It's a dank, cramped ship and a huge disappointment for what should be the Waste's biggest settlement. And the side quests around here aren't that great either, save for the Declaration of Independence one and the Android one, at least if you follow it through and don't accidentally cheat yourself out of the conclusion like I did in my recorded playthrough. Here you meet Madison Lee, who is a variation on Bethesda's abrasive arsehole model. She in particular is a short-tempered jerk who provides frustration with almost every line of dialogue. Like her incredibly condescending, "I'm sorry, I don't know what else to tell you," brush off when inquiring about the possible location of your dad. You know what else she could have told you? And what she does tell you with just a bit of prompting? The location of their lab. It was infuriating having her act like you were being unreasonable in your extracting of information without even imparting the most basic, most simple piece of info that would have gotten us out of her hair. And in a way, it's foreshadowing for what a nightmare she'd prove to be in the tunnels later on. So you head off to the lab to find Liam Neeson isn't there, but is in fact somewhere else, and at this point the game of cat and mouse with Dad starts to feel silly. It's just gone on way too long at this point. Thankfully, Vault 12 and the Tranquility Lane simulation within is a real treat. Narrative-wise, it's a good little mini-story. The residents of the Vault are living in a simulation, but the simulation's controller, Stanislav Bron, is a sadistic little prick, and he's had them trapped in stasis for hundreds of years. Their physical bodies withered and decayed, but with enough brain activity left to keep them trapped in his saccharine hell. Artistically, it just works. The cheery, cheesy music, the pristine lawns and houses, everyone talking and walking like a typical 50s nuclear family, and all in black and white. Something as simple as it being in black and white adds a very unsettling aura to the whole thing, which gives away the lane's sinister secret long before you even begin to piece it together. I stopped at making Timmy cry before I shut down the simulation in my playthrough, but if you're evil enough to carry on down that route, you can get to some pretty messed up hijinks at Bron's behest, such as ending a marriage, or let's say having a woman burned to death by booby-trapping her stove. Tranquility Lane is the perfect blend of silly and creepy, and really just sums up what the Fallout universe is. After that fantastic distraction, however, we're back with Liam Neeson and things get frustrating again. It's here you really get the sense that Bethesda's writers aren't living on the same planet as the rest of us, because when dear old Dad asks why you're out and about, you can either be sweet and saccharine with a "I couldn't bear to be without you, Pops," or a Butch Deloria-styled punk with "that smelly old vault was boring" option. There's never any opportunity to call him out on the fact that his reckless actions put you in mortal danger, and that had Amata not found you first, you'd have surely been dead. By the very nature of the game, you probably had to kill to get your way out of the vault, forever destroying your innocence and leaving you lost and alone in an unimaginably hostile world, and it's all because of him, and you can never let him know that. There are a few speech options where you can resent his leaving you, but he just talks down to you like a baby, and you can never bring up these very valid points. From the game's point of view, you can either carry on being huffy and stroppy, or you can go back to praising James like he's some kind of super messiah, and only then does he stop talking to you like you're a stroppy little kid. It's just hugely frustrating for the writing to have such gaping holes in it like that. Anyway, now that we've led a merry chase across the wasteland, for James, the going up portion of the roller coaster that is the plot comes to an end, and now everything comes crashing down at breakneck speed. We've got to the lab with the old science team and start to get everything sorted out. James's dream of pure water for the wasteland will finally come true. Never mind that if you disarm the bomb in Megaton, you can get access to a robot that can produce several litres of pure water per day, and that with the Brotherhood of Steel's focus on technology, they could surely just do something with the already available tech to start producing pure water on a larger scale. I guess it's the fact that it's going to specifically purify this irradiated tidal basin that makes it super special, but still, it really feels like they haven't been making the best of the resources that they've had available to them at this point. So literally 5 minutes after we step back into the lab to get back to work, the Enclave show up with their vertibirds. Oh, what luck! Oh, what timing! What precedes is the most incomprehensible sacrifice in the history of fiction, at least before the vanilla ending of this game. That's right, Bethesda sets this record and then breaks it in the span of just one game. James locks you out of the room with an unarmoured man and one lone Enclave officer, despite the fact that you've killed more than that to get here, likely quite effortlessly, and instead irradiates the chamber, killing him and the Enclave inside. Even overlooking the fact that you could have taken those soldiers yourself, the sacrifice still makes no sense. It's a water purifier, and one that doesn't yet work to boot, just because we don't have a GECK, which, now that I think about it, calls into question why James and the team have even bothered getting back to work on it, since James only identified the GECK as the missing puzzle piece and seems to have made no immediate plans to acquire one, but now this sentence is getting scrambled because I'm tripping over plot holes. Back to the plot hole I originally intended to complain about, why does any of this even matter? Besides the fact that they're aggressive to you on sight, we have no inkling whatsoever of why the Enclave are evil. These characters have no inkling of why the Enclave are evil, because the Enclave have never been in the East Coast before. All they know of the Enclave is their propaganda radio broadcast. Yes, while you can determine that propaganda is disingenuous, killing yourself rather than letting them have access to a water purifier that doesn't work is a massive overreaction to the situation at hand. So we begin the tunnel journey from hell as Madison Lee transforms from a scientist to some kind of screeching witch, and we make it to the Brotherhood of Steel, where outside of a vague warning from Lee, we still don't really learn anything about them. They're an order dedicated to acquiring technology who oppose the Enclave for unknown reasons, and who fight the super mutants for more immediately obvious reasons. Here we learn the location of the Gek and decide to go and get the Gek, but now I have to question my own character's motivations. Okay, so what was Liam Neeson's thought process on this one, My dad was working on a water purifier, but he needed a Gek to make it work. My dad is now dead, and the purifier is in the control of an apparently evil group. I am now going to go and find the missing piece to fix the purifier that is now in control of the evil group. What could possibly go wrong? And that's it, really. Frankly, I don't know why my character cares about getting a Gek. If I were my character, I'd at least be trying to liberate the purifier from those guys before I fix it. But anyway, we go to Vault 87, past the largely irrelevant to the main plot Little Lamplight, and inside we find an intelligent super mutant called Fawkes, whose character, while not entirely well fleshed out, is still pleasant and makes for good company. We also get the Gek, only to, you guessed it, be captured by the Enclave. So after a 30-second interrogation process where no harm comes to us whatsoever, President Eden lets us out and gives us all of our things back. So long as Bethesda are going for a record-setting, let's call this the least tense capture and interrogation ever, as well as the most underwhelming escape. Okay, so we haven't escaped yet. Autumn refuses Eden's order and demands a shot on sight, but we fight our way through that no problem, and meet Eden, who is a computer, which is a bit of a non-twist, really. Think about it, his being a computer changes literally nothing about his character or the situation at hand. You could argue that his being a computer is what allows us to so easily manipulate him with speech checks, but then we've made bigger leaps of logic with apparently living characters, so take that however you want. But yes, as I alluded to earlier, through a simple series of speech checks, you are able to get Eden to amiably agree to kill himself and his entire base of troops, and then you just walk through the front door. Now, the record for most underwhelming escape is set. He also reveals the Enclave's grand plan to eradicate all mutants with a virus distributed through the water, and I know what some of you may be thinking. That doesn't sound that bad. Like, Underworld and other non-feral ghouls get the shaft here, as does Fawkes, but killing off countless feral ghouls, hostile super mutants, centaurs and other horrors seems like a goal that basically every other faction would agree with. Nobody knows about Fawkes, the Brotherhood of Steel shoot Underworld residents on sight, and no other character except Three Dog has mentioned Underworld or ghouls, so we have no reason to believe that they care about them, which makes their opposition to the Enclave even more unscrutable. Hell, if anyone else had come up with that idea, every character in the Wasteland would probably think it was a brilliant idea. It might be worth mentioning that in Fallout 2, the Enclave considered every citizen of the Wastelands to be a mutant, tainted by living out in the irradiated wastes. They planned to wipe out everyone, clean up the land, and colonize with their so-called pure and clean populace. Basically, their plan is eugenics on a massive scale, the genocide of near enough everyone so that their pure genes can take over. Do you hear that, Bethesda? This might be worth mentioning. There is no allusion to this darker side of the Enclave anywhere in Fallout 3. I mean, let's compare the two games a minute. Fallout 2 introduces the Enclave by showing them mercilessly slaughtering an entire family, then later on introduces their plan to kill everyone in the Wasteland, clean it up with the Gek and take over. Fallout 3 introduces the Enclave by having them attempt to take control of a water purifier, only for the irrational bastard in charge to flood it with radiation, then introduces their plan to provide fresh, clean water for the Wasteland, as well as getting rid of the super mutants which have been plaguing them for years, all in one swift, clean swoop. Which of these two Enclaves sounds more evil? I could totally understand if anyone starting this franchise at Fallout 3 fails to see what's so bad about the Enclave. So on the outside you meet Fawkes, go back to the Citadel, go on a challengeless but still really awesome killing spree with the giant robot Liberty Prime, get back to the Purifier, convince Colonel Autumn to pack up and go home in a scene even more underwhelming than the Eden encounter, and now it is the moment of truth. I'm going to be what some may consider unfair and review this ending by its original merits rather than the changes made with the DLC Broken Steel. For those who don't know, Broken Steel gets rid of the senseless self-sacrifice of this ending, offers more logical solutions, and adds a few more hours to the story which I have yet to play. But not everyone has Broken Steel. If you buy the Fallout 3 and Oblivion double bundle as opposed to the Game of the Year edition, you're still getting the vanilla version, you're still getting this ending, and this ending is the very definition of senseless self-sacrifice. So, in all the hubbub, something's dicked up with the water purifier and it's gonna blow up or something. Prior to the DLC, your choices were to sacrifice yourself, fix the purifier and die a fast, painful death, and the game ends permanently. Or you could go the selfish, evil route and have Sarah do it, which still for some reason makes the game end permanently. Or you could inject the not actually that bad sounding virus into the water supply, killing yourself and having the game end permanently. Or you could do nothing and the water purifier would explode, killing you and ending the game permanently. The elephant in the room is Fawkes, who can do this with impunity, as evidenced by the fact that he did exactly that very recently. With the DLC, he will do it, although he'll still call you a coward for some reason. Without the DLC, he will say something to the effect of, "No, we all have our destinies, this is yours, I will not rob you of that." And I want to take a moment to briefly ponder how ridiculous this is. Had there just been no dialogue in this area, we could have assumed it was an oversight from Bethesda, but the inclusion of this dialogue means that they themselves were aware that Fawkes was a viable candidate and decided to squirm around it in the most bullshit way possible. The way the game is so desperate to have you sacrifice your life, and the way it treats trying to get someone else to do it as the most despicable, evil, disgusting thing you could do really shines a light on how childlike and simplistic the game's entire concept of karma is. Every situation boils down to a black and white, with you either as a shining hero or an unreasonably horrible Satan figure, or in this case just someone who fancied a bit of self-preservation and arguably deserved, given how your main character powers make you and your continued existence an invaluable asset to the wasteland. Now, Bethesda could have done this if they wanted. They could have had their sacrifice with just the tiniest bit of not quite so lazy writing. Let's say, off the top of my head, you rush into the chamber to calm it down, only for the whole thing to go on lockdown, and it turn out that the situation is more severe than we realise. That way you're already doomed, and you may as well do the noble thing and save the purifier with your last moments, or do the supposedly evil thing and inject the virus with your last moments. Now, that's just off the top of my head, and I'm sure there are problems with it too, but already this seems like a much less clumsy way to get this sacrifice done. Just have your character say a last few lines of dialogue that show that they're accepting their situation with grace and dignity, and you've still got your shining hero. Bethesda could have done this if they wanted is pretty much the slogan for this entire story. The Enclave could have been a real clear enemy had they wanted to actually explain why. The Purifier could have been something which was dangerous in Enclave control if they wanted to expand the Enclave's motives and give them something other than an evil plan so mild it basically sounded like a good plan, but with a bit of collateral damage. As always from Bethesda, this story just feels half done, so rushed, and when you cut through the lines and lines and lines of dialogue, so insubstantial. So with all that said, what's my final opinion of this game? Well, what do you think? I really like it and would recommend it to any fan of the genre. Its world is great and provides hours of entertainment. Just check out New Vegas if you want to see what a company who actually knows how to tell a story can do with this property. Bye!